So let's go live then. Okay, we're live. So hello all of you out there, and welcome to a very exciting finals match for a very exciting tournament. I'm Ben from YGO from Zero, and if you're just joining us, we're covering a Yata format tournament finals. And Yata is a super fun format, takes place a little bit before GOAT and Chaos and all that stuff comes out. But there's really a lot of depth to the format and a lot of very interesting gameplay. So it is one of the more popular sort of DM era formats. And we're going to have a really exciting match between Jazz and AlephYa2, who are two great players in this format and in a lot of other retro formats. But to join me here, I'm not alone in the commentary. I've got a who's who of notable names in the retro Yu-Gi-Oh community. So if y'all want to just sort of introduce yourselves and talk about your experiences with the Yata format before we begin, that would be great. I guess I should tell which which one to start. So how we start with AJTBLS. I can't speak today. Already a good sign for the stream. But yeah, just
Sure.
tell us a bit about yourself, and also if you've got anything that you want to plug, go for it now.
Uh, sure. So my name is Adam. I go by AJTBLS online. I started playing retro Yu-Gi-Oh in about 2019. I've taken a real liking to GOAT format, and I've had a lot of success with GOAT format, and I'm recently picking up Edison. I do have my own YouTube channel as well. Um, J- uh, Yata format is something that I love. It's probably my favorite format over Goats. I played a
Oh,
lot with Jazz on his server, and it's no surprise to me to seeing him in the final. I wish it could have been him and I in the finals. AlephYa did beat me, so I'm looking forward to a great duel today.
yeah, and as a note, AlephYa beat you in the semifinals, so you almost made it to the finals. Uh,
Yes.
and Yeah, so I think a lot of people were sort of hoping for the match between you and Jazz just because your rivalry in this format is so legendary. Um, but this should be a good match as well. And happy to have you here in the commentary booth. Uh,
Thank you.
Lukaz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Lukaz. I also go by Lucas the Heretic on Dueling Book. So I've been playing this game since Metal Raiders basically, and Yata format was kind of one of the first formats that I really got hyped about because it really kind of escalated the competitive meta. I remember just like waiting for the Yatagarasu card to drop. I remember proxying that card. I was so excited for it to come out. So this format really has a special place in my heart, and I just think it's a fun format. So really excited to see such a big tournament for such a cool format. And also, I played both these guys. They both had really good decks, both really interesting strategies. So it's cool to see how this format's evolved since way back in the day.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's just been so much exploration in the retro scene here. And I think we see that in both of these decks because both these decks are super, super unique. The game is about to start, but Aretos, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly before we get into the action?
Yeah, sure. I'm Aretos. I started Yu-Gi-Oh in 2015. I've since taken a liking to the older formats. I really like Yada in particular. All of these power cards, they're very interesting to use. It's a different way of playing the game. And in this tournament, I was the 6-0 undefeated in Swiss. I did lose to AlephYa2 in the top 8 match. I was the only one to defeat Jazz in the Swiss rounds, though, which is nice.
Yeah, and that could maybe give you some insight into sort of the match here and what AlephYa2 could maybe do. Because Jazz is a very, very dominant duelist in this format. Uh, but I mean, AlephYa2 is no slouch either. And so it's just cool to see two Titans here. And of course, starting off with the classic retro move of T-set pass. Although Jazz has two sets, I guess. But, you know, it's it's just, you're in a retro Yu-Gi-Oh game when you see people setting.
Yeah, AlephYa is known for bringing some interesting, spicy decks to whatever format he plays. So it's always fun to watch this guy.
Oh yeah, and this deck in particular, I mean, you want to be setting in this. Like T-set pass is a very threatening move from this deck, and as that discard just revealed, it is Gravekeepers. So a spy is just really, really threatening. It can just get tons of board presence, and if you've got some other
Force him to do that
Gravekeepers card,
exiled.
yeah, and I
Surprised that
mean,
we've seen exiled there. I don't know. I, maybe I'm coming late to it. It might be a little early for that, unless you must not have another answer for Gravekeepers.
Yeah, it's a bit risky because like oftentimes you don't necessarily want to just start with the spy. You just
I
oh
saw
okay.
that Reaper coming. I had a feeling he wanted to put pressure with a Reaper at that point.
Yeah, and you're like, even if they've got just a
hoping it's
recruiter
spy.
set. Yeah, but the ring will deal with that Reaper very nicely. And this is a bit of a tough spot here. So Jazz got a little bit punished, but I mean, they're still both in pretty good situations. Like card advantage is relatively even at this point.
Yeah, Adam's right there. That was definitely a high roll play. Just kind of praying that there was no Witch or Singing set. Just kind of trying to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
if the Reaper connected, it would have paid for it in terms of the card advantage. But again,
Yeah.
just Jazz is still in a decent spot. He is up a card, so let's
yeah.
see.
And sometimes you just got to go for these risks in this format because, if you can get just an overwhelming advantage. Oh, interesting. The Reborn now, I guess, out of fear of hand rips, which could maybe imply that Jazz doesn't have something like a Ring of Destruction of their own, or they're just afraid of something like Harpies.
I don't think Jazz has Torrent set because this play wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think Jazz might have Imperial Order set, and that's why he did it now.
That makes sense. Trap Hole. Wow.
Nice.
That's an interesting tech here. But it paid off well against a tomato.
Let's see if Imperial is here, but I guess it would still be not working. So
Yeah,
it would still
wouldn't
kill
matter.
it. So there's no reason to reveal.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do like the Imperial Read, though, because that's also like when people set more than one back row in this format, it often does imply they've got like an Imperial or all their back row is chainable. And since Trap Hole isn't chainable, it makes sense that would be an Imperial Order there. Oh, Time Seal. Okay. Well, that's a chainable back row there. And then just another T set. But Time Seal's a brutal card in this format, honestly. Just because it's like...
Here?
Hmm?
Magician of Faith would be devastating here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, get back like a Reborn. But I guess the duo is kind of dead at this point. Reborn's still a very good card, though. Yeah, very interesting. I'm curious what that set would be then. Maybe it's just like a Serpent?
Yeah.
New Doria, another very interesting tech.
Is he Serpent or Sangan here?
Yep, Serpent, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like with Sangan, you'd be fine just summoning that out, hitting in. Oh, and hitting a Yata. That's really good for Jazz here.
Yeah, thank goodness he hit that for him.
That could have been the end of the game if the set isn't something like TT or something.
I got that Serpent in the grave, but yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh!
And it's back.
Did the shuffle happen? But it looked like it did. So yeah, as AGT mentioned, like the Serpent will check that. Air Force will also stop it. AlephYa2
This might
thinking.
get solemned.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to think there unless you've got the Solemn. Or if you're trying to bluff Solemn, I guess. But
I mean, Jazz does have a Serpent, so it wouldn't have been game over.
Exactly. And that's probably why AlephYa2 chose not to Solemn. Because they'd really have to just depend on a draw from the top to get rid of that Serpent. And it'd have to be something like Knock in order to actually permanently deal with it. So, not really worth wasting a Solemn on that yet.
Confi. Oh, nag.
Oh,
ouch.
That's really good for Jazz.
Yeah, that really hurts. So now we got to wonder what the new set is. Because I feel like if it was an aggressive thing, I mean, you could try and just bait out like a Knock or something and like bluff that you have a Serpent set. But I think in most cases, you're just fine slamming a monster down, hitting in. Oh, we've got some feedback from the YouTube chat. It says, Aretos is really quiet. Can you turn up the mic? So, yeah, if I think I could maybe adjust the user volume as well, but I'll do that when they're siding. So, so that way it will it won't distract from the gameplay. Necro Valley here, pretty good, I think. Just in case it is like a Faith set or something. That will stop the Faith from getting anything back. But it is a bit of a worrying spot for AlephYa2 because they are kind of just playing off the top. But Graceful can get them out of it. I mean, if there's anything that you want to draw on a top deck for, it's either Pot or Graceful. And Graceful, at least you get like a choice. So it provides you more choice than Pot, although you aren't actually gaining too much in terms of card advantage.
I think if you're Jazz, you're okay with the Graceful. I think that Jazz is in a really good spot here.
Oh, yeah.
So let's...
And discarding a Spy is very interesting here. Might be like a Sangan.
Probably drew another one.
Yeah, it could just be another Spy. Although if you're AlephYa2, drawing 2 Spy off a Graceful must hurt, because you really want those Spies in the deck to fetch off of other Spies. But there's probably one more left in the deck, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But yeah, Jazz just sort of biding their time, and you know, they've kind of got inevitability here.
When you look at AlephYa's graveyard and you see, you know, Graceful and Duo and Confi and Snatch gone, those are really big cards. The only really big threat now to Jazz is going to be a Change of Heart and a Pot of Greed. So him taking out the, I think he's going to probably take out the monster, I assume.
He looks like he's taking out the Necro Valley. So that could imply that the set is a Magician of Faith after all. Yeah. He wants to get the value there. That's really the only reason.
Standby. Should have done it in standby so we can add it back. But
yeah, we did see him actually think in standby phase. So he was clearly thinking about that a bit. But yeah, that's going to prompt a think from AlephYa2. Oh, we also have some feedback in the chat about AJT. Apparently, your mic is also a bit too low.
Okay, I'm gonna leave and rejoin on my phone.
Oh, actually, you're sounding good now. Like that was very good. So
okay,
yeah.
This could have been bait. This could have been bait by Jazz. He could have Yata and he could have a Nobleman or something here. Let's see, because let's see what happens.
I honestly think it was bait. Because Jazz knew about the Solemn, right? Like, there's no way you see the thinking on the Mirror Force and you're like, okay, he doesn't have Solemn. But it looks like that's just gonna go through. Interesting. Maybe he's got a TT and wants to TT like a potential Spy fetching out another monster. And so get value off the Faith beforehand. Bit interesting, though. Going for the Spear Soldier. Spear Soldier is a very interesting card in this metagame, I think.
I think it's good. Mirror's gone, too. This is going to connect.
Wow.
Could be Call.
Yeah, Call would also make sense for popping the Necro Valley. But honestly, you probably just bring in Eudoria here. Yep. Eudoria is coming down. And that happened after the Spear Soldier attack. So the only way to really proactively deal with the Eudoria now is just crashing the Spy in, which clears your entire field. And since the Spy was flip summoned this turn, you know, AlephYa2 will not be able to switch it to defense. So it's looking really bad for AlephYa2 here. I think they misordered their attacks here for sure.
They did.
No.
They did.
I mean, Jazz could have still wound up in the same situation, but at least AlephYa2 could have dealt 1,200 more damage, which would have been potentially pretty big here, as we're getting down to the point where both players are at around half, which is a very dangerous place to be.
Well, he could have kept one of his monsters also, right? Because now he can crash into that Spy.
Exactly. And
before he could have just ran it over with the Spear Soldier.
Yeah. So it's just kind of an awkward spot no matter what here. In a very commanding position for Jazz. And sort of an indication that Eudoria is a very powerful card here. As it does let you do these sort of proactive plays. And it can also be a very good defensive card as well.
So we're at 3-1. One of the cards are Serpent, and AlephYa's graveyard is just looking full of cards that he kind of want to top deck. He kind of needs Pot.
Yeah. Or, I don't know if AlephYa2 is playing Fiber Jar. But knock here. Hitting the Serpent, that's pretty good. Just getting
Yeah, the
that.
Fiber Jar.
There's the pot.
Fiber Jar
Wow.
doesn't synergize very well with the Necro Valley, so I'm doubting he plays it.
Yeah, but it is such a bomb card that he could potentially just be playing it despite the anti-synergy. It is
Sure.
very awkward though. Well, that implies no Fiber Jar coming in the near future. So, I'm kind of curious. I want to see after this tournament the ratios of Terraformings and Necro Valleys in AlephYa2's deck. The Necro Valley is like a neat card, but I'm not exactly sure how necessary it is to the strategy. It's of course very good at stopping certain things, but do you really want to play 3 of it, or do you want to just play 2? I mean, we know that they're on at least 2. And then with the terraforming, how many of those do you have in there? So, interesting sort of ratio questions.
Does Jazz have any good answers to a tomato left in his deck?
Well, if he's playing more Raigeki breaks, that could do it. But with the Serpent gone, you don't have the recurable resource, so you're going to have to sort of go negative on that over time.
He has his own tomatoes. He has his own tomatoes to crash, but I don't think that'd be a good deal because AlephYa can just take out a dark monster, right? And it's going to be probably another spear soldier or something.
Yeah.
So I don't really know.
He does still have Raigeki, presumably Dark Hole.
Yeah, and those will definitely help, but that's 1-for-1 removal. So it's, good, but also, AlephYa2 can then be a bit safer in committing more monsters to the board afterwards. I'm a bit curious how many new Dorias Jazz plays, because if he's playing more than just the one new Doria, he could potentially go into
be
Doria
useful,
here.
yeah.
AlephYa2.
So AlephYa does have to search first.
Yep.
Anybody wondering on that?
Yeah. So it is kind of interesting. Your Jazz can respond to what AlephYa2 brings out. And AlephYa2 might just want to end the tomato crashing here, or they might want to deck then a little bit more with another copy of tomato. It looks like they are opting for the 3rd tomato here. So if Jazz has another new Doria, it might be good to save it for the next tomato crash, because then you're depleting AlephYa2 of more monsters. And I feel like you don't want AlephYa2 drawing monsters at this point, right? Yeah, that crash is going to go through as well. And yeah, it might be an Assailant or a Spear Soldier. Not sure if AlephYa2 is playing more than one copy of those. Okay, looks like they are playing another Assailant here.
It's kind of Assailant's completely unacceptable if you're Jazz. You got to clear this. I hope Jazz has a new Doria or something to get rid of this, because this is just 2,000 and it's going to walk. So I know obviously he has targets for the tomato, but a witch is still not enough. Still gonna you need to get this thing gone.
Oh yeah, and even if Jazz got some more defensive options, the defensive options don't really work as well against AlephYa2 because Reaper is just checked by Assailant. It's just really new Doria or bust. And I wonder if Jazz has more new Dorias in the side to sort of bring in against this strategy, because I do think that might be a good option here.
I'm still not convinced that Jazz doesn't have a torrential set or something, because it's interesting to me that he decided to take the witch instead of a new Doria. So I'm not convinced that Jazz's back rows are complete bluffs yet, especially when you look at his graveyard. I think that there are still some good things available.
Oh yeah, and also we got to think about some of the plays where TT could have been activated earlier, right? One was the flip of the spy, but at that point you might want to save the TT for if AlephYa2 wanted to commit another another monster to board. And also you've got the call to sort of stop the Spear Soldier spy play there, right? The only other really good time it would have potentially come up is when AlephYa2 summoned Tomato. And in that case, you might not want to trigger the TT at that point because you figure you've got other outs in your deck. So I definitely agree. And I can't really think of what those back row could be besides things like TT. I mean, I guess maybe Imperial Order.
The problem here is that Jazz doesn't really have a good card to search with the switch.
Yeah, and Bazoo will not help here because unless you can get rid of that Necro Valley.
Yeah, if he's got an MST down there.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. because we have seen no MSTs out of Jazz so far, and it's a decent card just to set in the back row as a bit of a bluff. So that might indeed be what it is. Especially because it looked like there was some thinking in AlephYa2's end phase, and so Jazz might have been thinking, do I just blind snipe the back row in case it's something like a Solemn?
Maybe a game shot with Change of Heart.
Oh, yep, that would be pretty good too.
Mm.
Yeah, and if they've got MST plus Change of Heart and Bazoo, then that'll just be the end of the game. Although it seems like they probably don't have that because they are going for Necro Valley here. And AlephYa2 is thinking. So might be a Solemn set. Could also be Imperial Order, but it's kind of awkward Imperial Ordering here. Okay, it looks like it is Imperial Order. Probably the right thing to do, especially because you don't want that Bazoo like to buff itself out even more every turn. So you're potentially bring Necro Valley online the next turn, but it is a little bit awkward because you kind of want to save that for like more powerful spells.
Did Jazz make a mistake there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he should have done more damage.
Well, I mean, he has to now banish him now to protect his Bazoo, so
Yeah.
he is going to have to do that now.
Yeah,
What are you talking about? Activating Bazoo effect?
Yeah.
Yes, but hold on now. This is interesting because him choosing to do this now, if AlephYa top decks Change of Heart himself, that Bazoo is going to go to 3,400 and it will kill Jazz. So I'm not sure if banishing 2 is the right play now.
Well, I don't think it can go to 3,400 because you'd have to let IO lapse, and then the Necro Valley will be back online.
Oh yeah, I
guess. You can't banish.
I guess you're right. I guess.
But it's still a very.
So what's the deal? He's allowed to do this?
Yeah,
Bazoo
you can.
Banished? Oh,
yeah.
Imperial's negated.
Yeah. Imperial
very nice,
negates the Necro Valley, and also you've got kind of an interesting decision here because if you like let Imperial Order go, then Jazz gets to draw 4 off Mirage, which is so powerful and could easily get Jazz out of this situation. But if you keep Imperial up, you've got to pay 700, and you're putting yourself in a really risky spot to Bazoo next turn. So very, very interesting choice here. This game is already so intense, and it's just game 1.
Is there a way for him to resolve this chain link that he doesn't draw from Imperial and doesn't pay? I believe there is a way to do it, which is the question, right?
It's only, I think yeah, so I've looked into this.
Isn't it that he gets to choose?
So I've looked into this a couple times. If you're the player who has both Mirage and Imperial, you can choose which one resolves first. But if the 2 different players own the cards, the turn player has to choose whether to resolve their standby phase thing first, and then it passes to the other player here. So
yeah, if I recall correctly, at least back then, it was that the turn player could choose to resolve something, and then the non-turn player could choose to resolve something, and then if neither player did, then the turn player must resolve something at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it looks like they're wondering about that. So, I'll just try messaging one of them here. Yeah, so I'll send a message to Jazz. But yeah, turn player goes first here.
Like he can give Jazz he could give Jazz Jazz could allow it to go that way, but
yeah, but there's no reason
to resolve the Mirage.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yep, so yeah, it's a very confusing ruling. Like this has come up in a couple games before, just as people have been, playing more of the format recently. And we've like done a deep dive into that sort of thing in the YGO from Zero Discord. But this is, to the best of our knowledge, how it works. Yeah, but that makes this a very tricky spot. And it really does depend also on AlephYa2's draw here. Okay, the IO will lapse. And MST on the Mirage.
Oh, he's very open here.
Yeah, that's a big
But
risk.
what can he do?
Yeah, you got to go for it. Wow.
So
So
a monster is game, depending what it is.
yeah, if Jazz is playing like a Kaiku or Gemini Elf or something like that, or I mean, even if
like
it's
a
not.
Sangan.
Oh yeah, like even like a Sangan or something, or a Lily or a
Well,
Lily.
because Necro's working now, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, even if you just draw a weak monster there, the pressure that you're putting on your opponent is just so much. So, still a very, very commanding position. Dark Hole is very good here. It does clear the Bazoo. It looks like no IO set from Jazz.
Right.
But top deck war. And not committing that to board, so it could be another back row, and you're playing around like Harpies.
Could be Jinzo.
Yeah, exactly. Jinzo's really the other option. Or potentially like Hades. I've seen some people playing Hades. Not sure if Jazz is or not. But yeah, just a tribute monster. Really rough draw
Or
here.
it could also be like confiscation.
That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
AlephYa wanted.
Certainly no torrent, because
Yep.
you would have torrented that.
MST
Okay,
though.
that's good.
Yeah. That is a good MST there. You're saving 500 and also making the Spear Soldier a bit weaker. Unfortunately, Call and Reborn are both in Grave, so no last minute sort of getting out of it that way. But oof, I wonder what that set is, because the Spear Soldier is going to be able to deal a fair amount of damage on that potentially.
Yeah, Reaper wouldn't be a good card to set here.
Yeah, although you might have to, right? Like the alternative is you just die right to the Spear Soldier on its
Well,
own.
yeah, I mean, like it wouldn't be good for Jazz to have that one.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so intense. And as the decks get even lower, there's going to be more power cards. Okay, Fiber is actually, ooh, that's kind of a rough one here.
I think it's good for Jazz. I think it's good for Jazz.
It's definitely what they needed, but like this is kind of rough because you're at 400. AlephYa2 does get to commit here. A lot of your powerful going first options are kind of shut off. Like you can't use Duo, you can't use Comfy. So
I mean,
it's
the good thing though is that AlephYa2 doesn't have a battle phase this turn.
exactly. And so it will really just come down to what each of these players draw here. A lot of people aren't playing Cannon Soldier at this point in the game, so Jazz probably doesn't have to worry about that. And in a deck like Gravekeepers, you definitely can't fit that in. But AlephYa2 could potentially draw a fair amount of setup here. Very interesting game states, though. They're thinking. Let's see, what has Jazz got banished as well? So couldn't have drawn into Serpent, Faith. Well, I guess there could be more Faiths than Reapers, but no Serpent for Jazz here. Looked like just a T set and pass.
Change of Heart could be a good one for Jazz.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if Jazz has got Change of Heart, it's probably the end of the game here. Oh.
Misclick.
Whoopsie.
I think his hand might be bugged. I think he might need to refresh.
Oh, really? Ah, rip. Oh, rip. Yeah, that can happen with the Fiber macro, which is kind of annoying. The Fiber macro is really nice in a lot of ways, but it can lead to very weird sorts of things. Like we've also sort of found out that, if you've got control of your opponent's cards when you do the Fiber macro, you have to give that back to your opponent first, because then it will like mess up the shuffling process. And also, if you've got like fusion monsters out, they will actually be shuffled into your main deck. So, yeah, it's a great feature, but it's still got some issues. I'm seeing a TT is pretty good there. And now Change of Heart will just be the end of the game if Jazz has it. The fact that they're thinking here for a bit means that they probably, yeah, just a T set. Okay, more than T set, but yeah, it's kind of rough here.
What an exciting game.
Oh yeah, this is like one of the most intense games I've seen in this format. And I think it really shows like how awesome this format can be. Like a lot of people don't like Yata and a lot of the DM formats because you've got such powerful cards in play. But like when they're one of ooh, that's brutal. Oh, Io's
Imperial.
here. Yeah, and that will go
No
through.
mistake.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty rough for AlephYa2 though. They can't like necessarily go all in here with a power spell or something just to close out the game. They got to decide whether to commit into like a torrential or something. Okay, looks like they're just hitting in. I think it's probably the smart move here. Oof, Witch though. That's really good for Jazz. I wonder what they get here though.
Jinzo.
That's interesting. Maybe that, I mean, maybe it's a Snatch Steal then that they've got in hand. Because if they had Change of Heart, there's no way that they don't just fire Change of Heart last turn, right? And just go for game. Okay, and the Imperial Lore will have to be let go here because Jazz did not have the life points to pay for it. So we know that AlephYa2's set is not MST, because otherwise they would have won the game last turn, just MSTing the IO. So that means if Jazz does have like a Snatch Steal to pair with the Jinzo, then that might just go through. Definitely a tricky spot, though. And, both players are thinking like they're taking a while to think on each turn, and I don't blame them because, I mean, this is one
It's
of
a
the
very important turn for Jazz.
Oh yeah. As a note, if AlephYa2 had actually attacked in the correct order earlier, the game would actually be over by this point. So it just sort of shows the importance of just, you've got to be firing on all cylinders at all times. Even very minor misplays can come back at the end of the game and potentially cost you a game that you might have otherwise won.
So assuming Jazz has Snatch.
Yep,
oh,
there's
there
the
it is.
Snatch. Yeah. I mean,
So what are we running into here? A tomato or a spy?
yeah, but I think you kind of got to go for this play, right? You just tribute out Jinzo and then go for the set. I think this is still a very good position for Jazz. It's just you are at risk now of like if AlephYa2 has Change of Heart, potentially a Snatch Steal of their own if Jazz didn't have MST. Like, very risky spot, but probably
He
necessary.
dies to a lot of cards.
Yeah. But you kind of got to do it because you're dead to a lot of cards no matter what, right? When you're this low.
Very tricky spot.
Yeah. Hidden in there. Yep, it is a spy. So that we'll be able to search something from deck thing a little bit, but question is what AlephYa2 is going to get. I feel like you might just want to get
Assailant with Necro Valley can defeat Jinzo.
Yeah, like I feel like that might have been what AlephYa2 should have gotten here, but they're going to go for the Spear Soldier instead. Maybe that means they've got Assailant in hand already? or they just want to prevent Jazz from. I don't really get this play that much. Maybe they've got Book, and so like no, because if they had Book, they would have just booked their tomato, right? Okay, Reborn main 2. Yeah, you got to go for a spy here. Because any defense position monster that you put up that Spear Soldier can get over is going to deal you a fair amount of damage. Oh, that might be the end of the game here.
Yeah.
Ah, rip. Yep. That will indeed be the end of the game. Wow. To be fair to Jazz, like even with the revealed torrential, it's debatable whether AlephYa2 would have played differently there or not. But yeah, I mean, it always is very unfortunate when like an online bug does actually affect like the result of a game, which is one of the downsides to playing online. But yeah, just such a good game one, and that was just game one too. I can't wait to see what the rest of this match has in store, because now we've sort of gotten into the meat of it, right? Like, because now both players can side against what the other player has. And
That was unbelievable that AlephYa came back there. It seems like he's been just clawing back, just beating people down with his Gravekeepers deck all tournament. Because I don't know how. I honestly like that. Jazz was in such a commanding lead, and then eventually it just shifted just purely on damage. So I mean, AlephYa is kind of just showing that card advantage doesn't really mean much in this in that aspect with his deck. So I don't know. I'm really surprised that Jazz lost that game one, to be honest.
oh yeah, and I do think that that's one of the benefits from Gravekeepers, is that like, you can both shut your opponent down, right? Because Necro Valley shuts down so many things the Jazz could have done to potentially get more ahead there and actually push for a win. But you can also bring out cards like Spy, which gets you a bit more advantage, and just field presence to like beat your opponent in. So I think that like Gravekeepers has been slept on in the past, but after this tournament, maybe people are going to experiment with it more.
I mean, I will say like the spy, assailant, and spear soldier. Those cards do counter the standard Yata deck pretty well.
Oh yeah. Gets rid of Reaper, makes Serpent, just like chump blocking with Serpent is really bad into a Spear Soldier because it's basically not blocking at all. It's a really, really neat meta pick in some very interesting ways, because Gravekeepers, as they were conceived, are sort of targeted against a meta that doesn't exist, which is just shutting down zombies coming back from the graveyard. But it just happens to be that like a lot of cards in the format, a lot of sort of the top decks, the way they play is also just countered by Gravekeepers inherently. And so it's just really cool to see that being the case this early on in the game's history. Jeremy Swift brings up a very good point in chat. They say 23 watching, 10 likes. Could the other 13 people kindly obliterate the like button like Exodia? And I agree. Even though we won't see Exodia in this game, we can get people obliterating that like button. Get more visibility on this stream and also on the format. Cause I think after this stream, like, it really just does show, like, this game is just incredible, and it shows how awesome Yata format can be, I think. Oof. Duo's pretty good in the opener. Zayluke ain't a bad hit there, although probably one of the weaker cards in AlephYa2's hand. Yeah, pretty commanding start from Jazz. Looks like that might be the end of the sort of hand dismantling this turn, though.
Side decking is very crucial for Jazz because he gets to take out a lot of the cards that are weak against AlephYa's deck.
Yeah, take out the Bazoo, the Faiths, things like that. Kaiku's in here, which is interesting because its effect doesn't work under Necro Valley. So I'm kind of curious.
It is at least a generic beater.
That's true.
Yeah, it's a big Kai.
Goes over
1800.
the 1500s if there's no Necro Valley.
Yeah, and also if you're swapping out Bazoo, which is also a big beater searchable by Witch, and you don't potentially have like a Gemini Elf in the side deck, maybe you just go for the Kaiku because it's the biggest one that you got.
Yeah, probably just better than whatever he took out.
Yeah. Trap Hole on the Tomato. That's pretty good. I'm kind of surprised Trap Hole is still in the deck, honestly. But I guess it does get rid of tomatoes. It just doesn't hit like spies or something. AlephYa2's thinking. TT would be kind of rough here, but like, oh, Solemn. Wow.
That's great for Jazz.
Yeah, because now AlephYa2 is so low on life points. I guess they just had no way to clear the tomato or potentially clear a new Doria that the tomato would go into. But like, Witch can search out anything that tomato could have brought out as well.
Right, being able to just burn that Solemn, such a powerful card with the tomato is really, really good for Jazz.
Oh yeah, I'm very curious about AlephYa2's hand after that, honestly. Spear Soldier's okay here. Like, again, you know, it stops the tomato like crashing into Spear Soldier repeatedly and then bringing out New Doria and getting rid of it that way. But
A ring here from Jazz could likely just end the game.
yeah, the question is, do you even ring the Spear Soldier before it hits into the Witch of Black Forest? Because, you know, you search out a beater, ring the Spear Soldier, and then you've just got game there.
I don't know if I agree with that Solemn that we seen there. I was just trying to think about it, and I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, there's a ring. Yeah, I honestly think it was really it was almost like a greedy play in many ways. Just because like
Yeah.
oof. Yeah, this is the end of the
I
game.
think the order of that also there was possibly wrong by Jazz. He should have summoned then ringed
Yeah.
for a torrential spot, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Big game 3 coming up here.
Oh yeah. That was a very quick one too. We didn't even get to really see much of what Jazz sided against AlephYa2 there, which is probably good for Jazz because now AlephYa2 can't really counter side as much. Although, if you're playing Gravekeepers, you probably have in mind some of the potential side deck cards for that and are sort of prepared in that way. Because, like, of course, things like Nomen of Crossout are going to be very good against Gravekeepers. Getting rid of that spy is very, very nice if you can pull it off. But there are other cards, too, potentially. Like, just maybe more spell and trap removal to get rid of the Necro Valleys. A lot of interesting different ways you can go against the deck. Yeah, so I'm very curious how this game 3 is going to go. Let's see what the YouTube comments are saying here. Let's see. DK0 says that the Solemn wasn't greedy, there was nothing to gain. Was a desperate play, nothing to lose, I guess. I guess it was kind of a desperate play, but like, I don't know, I feel like you just, like, you want to save the Solemn for something later.
I think you just trust your top decks and you just hope to top something good and you keep the Solemn so that for later streets, because I mean, you know, by Soloming and giving up 4,000 life there for just a tomato, I don't think that was the right play. I think you just have to gamble on your future top decks. I think that was the better line.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I mean, what does AlephYa like? I mean, what do I know? AlephYa's in the final and I'm not.
Yeah,
so
that's
anyways,
true.
Here we go.
Yeah, it's easy to sort of commentate this stuff from the sidelines, but like in the moment and like knowing the players know what they've got in their hands, right, as well. And again, these are like some of the best Yata players out there, so they likely have much better reasons than we can come up with. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of an awkward thing. But like if you use the Solemn on the tomato, you're kind of already sort of giving the game away, right? Like that's why I don't really like it as much, because, you know, I mean, you're in a kind of a rough spot with the tomato there, but like there are top decks that get you out of it, and if you don't save the Solemn for Jazz's broken cards, then you're just kind of losing to those instead. But I don't know.
We do see AlephYa2 bringing in the Zombira, maybe because he saw the Kaiku last game.
Yeah. Zamara is also potentially good if there is kind of a funny side deck strat you can do against Gravekeepers if you have like Gravekeeper spies of your own in the side, and then you bring those in to potentially change of heart a spy and get out one of your own. It's obviously less good here than it would be in later formats because there's no like mind control. But it is something you could potentially do. So maybe AlephYa2 is sort of guarding against that a little bit.
Pot Graceful Duo, pretty good.
Yeah, that's the Trinity right there. So, yeah, and the crazy thing is that there are so many more power cards left in AlephYa2's deck. So yeah, very, very good start for AlephYa2. And that might just
much
be
more
enough.
than a Trinity available in this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of what turns people off from the format, but I honestly think it's a strength because like it just gives games a much different dynamic than you find in a lot of other formats.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's there's nothing like it in any of these other formats.
Oh, I 100% agree. And that's part of why like I like exploring these old formats because I feel like each one has their own feel to it. And like, I think it's cool that Yu-Gi-Oh has so many different ways to play it. And sometimes you're going to be in the mood for one, sometimes you're going to be in the mood for another. Heavy Storm coming in here. That's interesting.
I do think that AlephYa has a side strategy where he takes out a lot of the Gravekeeper engine. And I also know that Jazz is aware of that. So he may there may be some 5D chess going on here.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about this sort of format is that you can do a little bit of smoke screening because a lot of decks just share the same powerful core, right? So like, oh wow, Harpies there is very interesting. So now Jazz can just kind of feel safe just committing a fair amount of back row here. Although with the little amount of cards that they've got in hand, it might not matter as much. But yeah, I mean, once your opponent's off of the graveyard recursion stuff like Magician of Faith, or even things like Bazoo, which just manipulate the graveyard that way, it makes sense to take out the Necrovalley and stuff because they've kind of done their job. And then your opponent's playing from like sort of a weaker point if you can bring in like, potentially Magician of Faiths of your own or other very powerful cards that manipulate the graveyard. So
no attack here.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he's just hard reading that it's either a spy or a recruiter or something you just don't want to attack into. Jazz is going to require some masterful play around to come back in this duel. So the Delinquent was a good start, but he's going to need more than that.
Oh yeah. And the one nice thing is that now Jazz can, like, if Jazz ever draws any back row, they can just commit it to field, right? Because, I mean, MSTs are out there, so that's a little bit of a risk there. But with the Harpies and Heavy gone, you don't have to worry about, like, going massively minus on any back row that you draw. Monsters are a bit trickier because, TT exists, but it can potentially allow Jazz to, like, equalize the situation a little bit over the course of the game. And Elf is just kind of a house. It's very tough to get over without something like the Zamira in AlephYa2's graveyard, which can just be enough. Just like Spy has 2k defense, and that's enough to just wall up. Elf can be viewed in a similar way. Okay, committing another monster to board here. So one of those has to be like a recruiter, right? Or maybe like a serpent or something. Because you wouldn't play this much into like Raigeki otherwise. Or even like into TT, honestly. Okay, there's a spy flip. Oh, and you chain torrential to the spy. Okay, that's actually pretty good. Because then you wind up with a monster
Good
all
play.
alone.
He had no way to. Oh, and he had his
And
own
the
Sangan.
Sangan.
Okay, so that's a neutral trade.
Yeah.
Neutral trade there, and then the elf is gone.
Yeah, and you've got the Spear Soldier, which can also like potentially make draws like, Reaper or Serpent a lot less good here. Because it doesn't actually stave off the damage. So yeah, very good play here.
That
on the
witch
part.
will be very good here for AlephYa2, as
Oh, yeah.
Jazz is low on monsters.
Yeah, and this is getting
Yeah,
in.
lets him go aggressive too.
Now, this is a 3-turn clock if Jazz doesn't have any way to stop it. Whew. Yeah, Jazz is in a really tough spot here. Because I feel like if you had... Okay, Snatch on the Spear Soldier isn't bad. At least stops the damage from going through. But...
Well, this just searches. He can't search spy. So what is this search? Exiled maybe? I don't know.
Or Zimbira as well, potentially. Or just like
Sure.
beat sticks if they brought him in. Kind of an interesting play. I feel like Jazz has to have something for this, right? Because otherwise I think you could potentially just snatch steal and wall up behind the soldier until you draw something. It's obviously not the... Oh, a Sura Priest. Okay.
Wow.
That could actually be very good here for AlephYa2. Yeah, this is a bit of an interesting spot. Yeah, the Assura Priest is coming down. Will that be met with like a TT or...
If I have torrent here, I'm not torrenting this. I'm going to take 200 and then I'm going to continue.
Yeah. Trap hole though.
Yes, hold
That's
for sure.
Yeah. Trap hole's coming in
hold for sure.
clutch. I think a lot of people in this format have sort of shifted over completely to torrential tributes. Because it can just wipe out so many more monsters and also hits things like Yata as well, which can be a game ender. But Jazz is out here showing that Trap hole still has a place in this format and can be very, very good. And Jar's another card. We didn't really get to see it game one, but or I'm not even sure if they have it in the main deck or the side deck, but can be a very good card. Just sort of drawing deeper into your deck to your power cards.
Yeah, big fan of that card in this format. You can bait the heavy or harpies. You can lower your hand size for their, comfy, delinquent, forceful.
Exactly. And it can also get around the Yata Loop as well. Of course, if your opponent is getting in with Yata, it's still not good for you, but at least, it can help a little bit.
And then he's got the Time Seal also, which does similar stuff. And also, just thinking about this Fiber Jar, Time Seal would be really interesting with that.
Yeah. And that's actually something that Jazz has mentioned, I think, about how Time Seal is actually one of the few cards that can actually, sort of interact with Fiber Jar beyond the reset, which makes it very, very good. Interesting here. I guess I get why you want to commit more that way, but it's just kind of iffy. I mean, they've got to have like an Io or a Solemn or something here. Time Seal coming in clutch. I mean, this may only be like 500 a turn, but it's still a very commanding presence. And I think at this point in the game, like the board presence matters a lot more than the actual damage output. Yeah, I think that's smart. Like, if you're AlephYa2 and you potentially have TT, I don't think you use it here.
Yeah, Sangan probably one of the best draws Jazz could have gotten here.
Yeah.
Super good.
Puts Aleph on more of a clock. Kind of fades the Dark Hole, because the Dark Hole is not really good into this board. Oh, but the Dark Hole's going to be gone for anyways. Kind of an interesting play. I definitely see why you do it, because the clock is now increased, but...
Do you search Yata here and just hope to walk with it? Because he has hole.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, there is a risk if like
I think you search Witch. I think you search Witch, to be
Yeah,
Yeah,
honest.
I'm a
I
little
like
worried about what he
Witch.
drew.
see that's the safer play, but like okay, yeah, he went for the safer
Because
play.
I'm thinking like set monsters coming up here. No.
Okay, set back row, but AlephYa2 did think when the Sangam was summoned earlier, so Jazz might have the read
Might
that they do have.
might solemn this Witch.
Yeah, just shut Jazz off from monsters. I think that'd be pretty good.
Solemn here makes sense. Because you're going to take 11 anyways. Might as well take 2650 and no search. Deal with
Yeah. I mean, maybe Alf is thinking like
2550.
Yeah. I mean, it really does depend on. Yep, there's the solemn. I think that's the smart move there. So now it's just a top deck war until a monster is drawn. It looks like to sort of
Jazz
force a
did a
player.
great job coming back from the spot that he was in.
Yeah, and I think that shows like even if like there's some broken openings in this format. Don't get me wrong. Like I mean, we've seen 2 of them so far in this match, but like it really does. I mean, there are games where it can actually end the game right there, but in a lot of cases, skillful play can actually equalize the situation later on, and makes for some very, very exciting games.
There are so many powerful cards that, yeah, even if you get hit with some powerful cards, there's a good chance you got some of your own, or that you're going to get some.
Exactly. So it's a bit different. Like, and the tolerance on this sort of thing is going to vary from person to person. There are some people who don't play GOAT because they're like the Trinity. It's too much for me. But I think that like it's definitely worth experiencing at least once if you're watching these games and you're like, oh, this does seem a little bit interesting. Like, just try it out once, and I think you'll find that a lot of the time it's not as bad as you may be expecting. But this is a think here, so maybe another solemn in the back row. I feel like if it's MST, you just fire that MST like every day, right?
Yeah, I don't think MST would be a thing.
Yeah. Jazz is checking the graveyard, seeing what power spells AlephYa2 has left, deciding whether to pay for this order. It is a bit of a thinker here. Jazz also has a lot of powerful spells left in deck, but they can choose to shut off their order at any point in the future. So it's not as big of a thing. It's more about the damage here, I think. And they will indeed pay for it. I think that's probably this. Oh, yep. And with the new Dorian field, that makes a lot of sense. But there isn't really too much alpha. Oh, could potentially be a ring. Could be Mirror Force. Yep, there's a ring. That will indeed go through.
Well, we know AlephYa has Dark Hole, or no, sorry, it's used. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah. I don't think.
I think that you still pay for the Imperial there.
Yeah. No, I think it was the right choice. The real question will be next turn, do you pay for the Imperial? Because then you're getting down to like 800, and that's a very worrying place to be. But if your back row can support it, then okay, it's another set from AlephYa. Very dangerous situation for both players here. Oh, these games have been so intense. Yep, and it does get paid for. Ooh, and the normal summon exile trying to hit in.
Do you solemn this if you're AlephYa?
I think you might, honestly, because if you've still got things like the spies in the deck, right? Or I mean, if you draw a spy, you're probably just going to summon it and hit in. But
He's used 8 monsters. I mean, there's definitely no guarantee of drawing a monster.
Yeah,
It's a tough one.
okay, so it looks like
Because
He's got book.
Well, Book can't do anything with the order.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to think what could he possibly have to think on the attack? Is it mirror?
Probably, yeah. It's probably got to be, or maybe Call, because Call might be actually what it is. Because if you call back a monster to block this, then Jazz can just exile force it in main phase 2. So I'm thinking it may be, but if it's Call, I mean, Call would have to be the most recent set in that case, because otherwise you could have just gone for game. Interesting.
Nothing.
So that makes me think it is Mirror Force. Because otherwise, I don't think there's really, unless you want to bait out like a TT later on. But okay, it is Mirror Force, yeah. That will clear the exiled. And Jazz is just going to pass, so maybe Jinzo in hand? It's a really unfortunate time to draw
You would
Jinzo.
tribute it off. You would distribute it, right?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Jeez. Here we go.
So I'm very curious what the last card in hand is. Yep.
Mirror. Okay.
And there's Mirror
Okay.
Jazz. Oh, and a
Oh.
Solemn for the Mirror Force. Oof. Oh, very
did have the
GG's
Solemn.
here. It was a Kaiku. Okay. I feel like maybe.
That's it. We got a champion.
Yeah, we got a champion here. Yeah. Very good play from both players here. Very, very intense. Yeah. But, very, very good. Let's see if we can actually invite these players in here to the commentary chat, because it would be great to hear their perspectives on these games. But what an intense set of games. Very, very awesome to see. And, like, it's just, these games are, like, why I love Yata format. It's just so good. But, yeah, let's invite them in here if I can. I'm trying to do it on my phone just to keep something on screen for the folks at home to watch. Let's do this and add members. I should work out a more efficient system for doing this in the future. There's Jazz added, and now let's get AlephYa2 in here as well. Okay, they're added to the call. So yeah, if they want to join in, that would be good. But yeah, man, what an intense game there. I hope we do get to hear their thoughts, because there was a lot going on throughout the entire time. Soulmaster Matt asks, why didn't Jazz summon Kaiku after the Mirror Force? I think they were maybe afraid of like a change of heart or a Snatch Steal. And they've got a Mirror Force of their own.
He had Imperial.
Well, Imperial was lapsing. That turned into... Or no, yeah, you're right. Yeah, Imperial would be up one more turn. So, yeah, I'm actually a bit curious about that. Let me actually check the file. Yeah, Imperial Order is still up. So, yeah, I am kind of curious why they didn't do that. Well, we can ask them themselves if they join the call after this. But
I do have to get going. Thank you very much
yeah.
for having me, and congratulations to AlephYa, and thank you for hosting the tournament, man.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for joining me in the commentary here. Everyone go check out AGTBLS's channel. It's in the description of the stream if you do want to check it out. A lot of great GOAT format gameplay there. And is there any potential we may see some Yata gameplay on there in the future?
Yeah, I was actually looking at some of my replays from this tournament, and I was debating maybe making a video on that. I've had some success from other formats, and I want to share that as well with YouTube. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Later, man.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And yeah, I mean, we'll keep the chat here going for a little bit longer, just in case.
Yeah, it seems AlephYa2 will join in a few minutes, he says.
Awesome. Yeah, we get the thoughts of the current champ, but both players did very, very good here. So, second or first, I think their status as legendary Yata players is firmly cemented. I think is it the second time that AlephYa2 has won a Yata tournament with sort of an off-meta deck? I can't remember if they
He
won with Gearfried.
he won with Gearfried, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so
Yeah, that deck inspired my choice for this event, actually.
oh wow. So
And
maybe
I ended up going 4-2 with it. Very good deck.
yeah. AlephYa2 is the innovator in this format. Really awesome to see. So maybe we'll see more people on Gravekeepers next time. Because I mean this deck is just so sick. Like I know that I've tested out Gravekeepers myself, obviously not to the same degree as AlephYa2 because I was sort of doing like a memeier build. So I was playing things like Royal Tribute at 3 copies, which you should not do if you want to build Gravekeepers in this format. Card's not good, especially with such a low monster count. But I was just going in on the meme and stuff, and the deck actually performed surprisingly well. So it makes perfect sense that a deck that's a bit more optimized would be able to see tournament success here. And it's just awesome to see it top, especially
It's got a lot going for it.
Oh yeah, it really does. And one thing that I'm actually curious about here is that there's a Gravekeeper card that we didn't actually see from AlephYa2 called Rite of Spirit, which is basically just Call of the Haunted for Gravekeepers, but it's at 3. So, you can get a lot of graveyard recursion that way. So I'm curious to hear AlephYa2's thoughts on that and whether that's a potential thing to add to the deck in the future, or if the deck is potentially good as is. But I think we're probably going to see a lot more experimentation with this deck in the future. But yeah, so let's see. I've been neglecting the YouTube chat a little bit here. So let's see some of the reactions here. We see Red Eye Solari saying GK sweep, GK sweep, GK sweep. Yeah, and it really did. Surprisingly breakout deck of the format. Awesome to see. GBO says, good job, AlephYa2. Red Eye Solari says GG's to both. And definitely very GG's to both. Both players were playing on the top of their game here. DK0 says, inspired lots of people, myself included. And yeah, I'm excited to see more inspiration in the future. And History of YGO1 says, proof hand control isn't tier 0 if the Gearfried win wasn't enough early on. And I agree with that. I mean, I feel like people, it's sort of like Yata had a reputation, like not necessarily a rightful one, but I feel like I'd heard from people that like hand control was the best thing you can be doing in Yata. And I do think that it's still like probably one of the strongest decks in the format, especially because like, part of the reason why Gravekeepers is so strong is that it does do things to counter the typical hand control strategies. So I do think that it still, deservedly has a tier 1 spot. But this tournament and also the Gearfried win from before definitely does show that there are other things you can be doing in this format. Hello, welcome to the call.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. And congratulations on your win.
Perfect.
Congrats,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think it couldn't have been closer in the end. What a thriller.
Yeah, down to the wire there. But
yeah, Exile beat down on both sides. Don't see that too often.
Yeah, but it was a desperate enough spot. And that was just super cool. What are your thoughts on Gravekeepers? Because like this was a deck that no one really like. People have been experimenting with it a little bit, but no one really had it on their radar as like an actual competitive deck going into this tournament. So like, what are your thoughts on the deck? And was there anything that like surprised you in playing it throughout the tournament?
Partially it was a spontaneous decision to play it. My main thought was I like the archetype in general, and in Goat in Goat format it's basically a worse warrior deck whenever you look at it, because for warriors there are 6 standalone cards, and Gravekeepers with the Necrovalley boost basically become pseudo warriors, but you need the extra resource of the field spell always. But when I looked over to Yata, yeah, there is not really this solid standalone beatdown deck that would be just straight up better. And yeah, I thought like depending on how many people run Jiminy Elf, because that's one of the main beaters and it has 1900, and my Gravekeepers boost themselves to 2000 with the field spell, so I thought that would be a good tiny edge there, and and just the standard hand control deck. Everyone basically runs Reborn and Call. Most people pre-boo as well, or at least half. Fiber Jar is negated by Necro Valley. Magician of Faith is often played. I probably forgot another. There's like one or two other cards that lots of people run. So just lots of free negate targets basically. And yeah, Gravekeeper Spy is just a sick card in general. I would have played it in a normal deck also.
Yeah, I think we've been seeing some people try out Gravekeeper Spy in like a normal sort of deck, seeing your success in the tournament, and that card's just a house.
Yeah, honestly, I think I've said that before quite often in regards to Goat format. Spy is one of the format warping cards in Goat format. Whenever you build a deck, the first thing you have to keep in mind is do I have enough outs to resolve Gravekeeper Spy from the opponent? And yeah, it's just so good there. Like aggro and mid-range control decks run it now. Even goat control decks start to run it. And I didn't see a reason why it shouldn't be at least decent in Yata format as well.
Yeah, I think you definitely proved that it's more than decent. It's very good. And I think that's one of the fun things about exploring these past formats, knowing what we know now, because like, because of all the experimentation that's gone into GOAT format, people are viewing deck building for these old formats very differently than they have in the past, like especially when these formats were actually going on.
So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it's really cool to see these sort of innovations like take hold. And I'm really curious to see how this will shift the metagame for Yata in the future.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, for me, it's always cool to play those formats because it's almost a start from scratch. Like a GOAT format, as you said, like years and years of playing and testing and established things, and there's only so much more new to explore. But yeah, Yata format, this is my second tournament I ever played, and it just always feels cool to look into it with a new angle, a new meta, new things to try. I mean, the cards are the same, but they work. It just feels different to play those formats. I can't really explain it, but it feels like playing a completely different game than Goat format.
And
it's cool. It's a really cool time for this format too, because like I remember when Goat format was taken off and everyone was playing Goat control, and then there was that period of innovation, and now it's kind of settled down. It feels like Yata's kind of in that where for a while it was all hand control, and then you got people coming in here mixing it up. So
exactly.
It's a cool time for it.
Yeah, and
exactly. I also really like the format. I think I wrote it before yesterday or so in the chat somewhere. When you come from a GOAT perspective and look at the card pool and the standard lists, you think, oh my god, this format is a sack festival. Basically, who opens more power spells like confiscation and you will definitely win. Because in GOAT format it sometimes is the case, but I feel like the impact of the power spells is not as big here as one would think. Like I won a match 2-0 where I got 2 and pots from the opponent first turn, but the games just take longer. You can't convert your card advantage as fast as you can in GOAT format, and therefore you have a lot of time to grind back to equality and draw your own power cards, and it's just a very, very skillful format, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we saw that in these games because game 2 kind of ended quickly, but games 1 and 3, like it was a long grind back and forth, and we did see some like pretty busted opens where like one player got down very low in card advantage early on, but then they were able to like
exactly.
Yeah.
I think was it game 3 where I also opened like Grace Pot and Do, and Yeah, but very quickly, like 1 or 2 turns later, it was back to an even game state. I can't really explain it why, but it's just really crazy how fast this swings back here.
Yeah. And I hope that, any GOAT format players out there watching sort of view this as an opportunity to like jump on into Yata format and like try it out. If you feel like, you missed that sort of period of experimentation with GOAT, Yata's a perfect sort of testing ground for these sorts of things. And it's very fun. So
yeah, definitely. I think to get a hold of more GOAT format players, that it has to feel competitive for them. Like I think that this tournament was good with 36 participants. I think.
yeah,
Like for a small like local, you can't really motivate people. But if there's a big enough turnout, I think you could definitely see some more of the GOAT crowd here as well.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely planning on potentially doing some more Yata tournaments in the future, given how successful this one was and like how much experimentation actually happened in it. Because I'm just so
But yeah,
curious to see where
I'd
this going to
definitely
go.
be down. I'd definitely be down to play more. I really like the format. I mean, obviously a bit positively influenced now by by having won both tournaments I entered. Obviously that streak won't continue much longer, but yeah, I still really like it. I also like the fiber format tournament that you had before, even though I only went 2 and 2 in 2 there, but it felt similar here, and I just like it feels more natural, like trading betas in a pure way instead of having power special summons and bonus banishes with Chaos Soccer. So you don't really have that here.
Yeah, I think it's a good balance between like, Yugi Kaiba is sort of viewed as the ultimate playground format where it's just, lodgins and battle oxes and stuff. And that's like pure beater focused. But then
Yeah,
like later formats, you get more like combos and more like special summons, as you said, and just sort of different lines of play. But I feel like this is a good balance between those two sorts of ends of the spectrum.
The
yeah,
cards are super
I'd
powerful in
agree
this
with you.
format.
Yeah, and
Like, but they're not like they're very straightforward.
yeah,
Destroy this, destroy all of that. So it still has. It's not like Chaos Sorcerer or Blackluster Soldier. These, when you get to later formats, the effects start to really change the game. It's much more of like a kind of honest feel to it.
yeah, and also as we saw here too, like Chaos Sorcerer and like BLS, those are like boss monsters, so they've got very
Yeah.
powerful effects, but also they can like put a lot of pressure on the game itself, just hitting in, putting your opponent on a clock. But here we saw that like you can be trading back and forth like powerful spells and traps, but at the end of the day, you still need other monsters to actually do things. And so it can give the games a very like more of a grindy quality to it, and also I think have more comeback potential because even if you get blown up by powerful spells, you're not necessarily on a clock, so you can have time to get back into it.
Yeah, exactly. I'd pretty much sign what you just said. It feels really grindy here.
Yeah. But before we wrap up discussion here, there was actually one other Gravekeepers card that I wanted to ask you about. It's a card that I think is kind of interesting. Did you look at Rite of Spirit at all, or like consider that?
I had a feeling that you would, when you said another Gravekeeper card, I knew that you would say Rite of Spirit. To be honest, I didn't look at it for this tournament. Somehow, no idea why. I'm not sure if I'd maybe one copy because the special summon pressure is kind of neat, but yeah, I'd have to think about that. Could play one copy because I don't have the other revive cards, at least not in the main due to Necro Valley. So basically having the pseudo Gravekeeper's Call. Yeah, one copy could be a decent idea, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you don't want to include it, I'm sure that people will experiment with it in the future too. Like, there's going to be a lot more Gravekeeper experimentation from this point on. So,
Yeah, it always depends. The more Gravekeepers, the deeper you go into the archetype, the more value Rite of Spirit gets as well. Like, I mean, I ran 7 Gravekeepers in the main, and I think one Rite of Spirit is totally fine with those ratios.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
think one of the reasons I like Rite of Spirit is it actually can let you play less Gravekeepers as well. Because if you manage to successfully resolve Spy and bring out like an Assailant or a Spear Soldier, then you don't necessarily need to be playing more Spear Soldiers or Assailants in deck if you have Rite of Spirits to bring them back.
Yeah,
But
that's also true. There has to be the balance. Like you need enough Gravekeepers in the first place as potential targets, so that Rite of Spirit isn't dead too often. But as you said, yeah, you can recycle also the ones that have been used before as well.
yeah. So I'm curious to see what people do with the deck from here, because I think there are a lot of different ways to go with it. And I mean, as we've said, like Yata's in a period of experimentation, and I'm just really excited to see how it all turns out. So thank you all for playing in the tournament and also for joining me here for commentary. Like I thought this was really awesome. And I hope this got people interested in Yata format.
Yeah, from my side, thanks for hosting the tournament. Of course, I always really like to play those, especially the multi-day ones. For me, that's also always cool.
We should be having another multi-day one this upcoming month in October. I still need to decide on the format, because normally what we do with these is we just go to the next format that I'm going to cover on the YouTube channel. But I'm not quite done with Yata on the YouTube channel. So there's a question, do we move on to the next format, or do we, sort of replay an older format? Maybe not Yata, since we just did a tournament in it, but we'll have to see. And, maybe that's something that I put up to a vote in the Discord. So if you're watching this on stream and you're interested in joining the next tournament, definitely hop over to the Discord. Link is in the description of the stream, and you can have a say in exactly what we're doing next month. But I hope that everyone enjoyed it. And, again, if this got you interested in the format, definitely hop over to the YGO from Zero Discord. There are also other places to play Yata as well. The Format Library Discord is a very good one for that. Especially if you want more of a rated play for it, because they've got a rated ladder there for Yata. And there's also another Discord that's a bit less active, but it's been seeing a bit more activity lately, called Yataopolis. And I can leave a link to these Discords in the description of the stream. I don't have them there now, but they'll be there after the stream wraps up. So definitely check them out if you're interested. Now, to any of my co-commentators here, any last thoughts that you want to say on this match or the format in general, or just anything you want to plug?
I got nothing to plug, but thanks for having me, man. It was a really fun tournament. I'm definitely looking forward to playing in more of these, whatever you're running, especially, more of these retro type formats. Trying to get in here and, play around with a new meta. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, happy to have you. And I think we're definitely not going to, for the next format, it will probably be one of the formats that is still more up in the air in terms of what the meta is. So it probably won't be something like Yugi Kaiba, where it's all known. So there should hopefully still be some room for experimentation in next month's tournament as well. So I look forward to seeing what y'all come up with. But with that,
looking forward to the
good chance
the next
you will see me in the next tournament as well.
Yeah. Aretos, do you have something to say, or?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Yata develops after this tournament. I feel like a lot of people, like their decks weren't tuned to beat this Gravekeeper strategy, but that may change in the future. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah,
I probably won't be coming with Warriors next time. He ran over me with those 2Ks for quite a while.
Yeah, and
but you still managed to beat me.
I got so lucky to beat you.
Yeah, I didn't check the replay, but I can remember there was a painful dark hole for me, and I felt like I had the match in the bag pretty for a pretty big chance, but then but
it was a pretty gross
that's
one.
Yugi. I also won other games before by getting really lucky, so yeah, that's part of the game.
Yeah. But, not necessarily a bad part, because there's still a lot of skill expression. And I'm really curious to see how the different decks match up and how that affects the build of different decks. I think the side deck is also a place where there's going to be a lot of development in the future. Now that people know that they have to side against Gravekeepers, that could change a bit as well. So I'm really excited to see everything
Oh
that
my God,
arises from
yeah.
this.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that's one thing I can already say now. Please don't judge my side deck too harshly. This is the most random pile of whatever cards you will ever see. I had honestly for the main deck I felt quite good, and for the side I just threw random stuff in there because I thought like, okay, everyone will play hand control either way, and I don't know what I really want to side against it. It's just really a random pile of cards. Don't take that too seriously.
Yeah, we don't know what we're siding against yet, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, there's so much. I even cited two Karibos because I saw someone in the chat, someone in the Discord writing about machine OTK, and I thought like, okay, I don't want to get crushed by those rogue ideas, so I had super wild cards in there.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be experimenting a fair bit more with Yata with like the rogue decks and stuff on my channel in the future. Not sure how that will turn out. I probably won't have optimal builds for them, but it'll be interesting to see if there are any other decks that, you know, maybe the proof of concept will be in, you know, how they do in those videos or something. But there's still a lot of experimentation here, so I'm really excited to see what people come up with, and just see how it grows. So again, if you've watched this stream and you're interested in Yata format, definitely check out the Discords that I mentioned and just try it out for yourself. You know, dive in. I think everyone in the community is pretty welcoming to new duelists, and there's a lot of room for growth and experimentation here. So definitely check it out. But with that, that's going to be all for today. I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'll be signing off here. So thank you all for stopping by, and I look forward to the next one.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah, no problem. Peace.